And hello, hello. It is 2:22 p.m. on Thursday, July 31st, 2025, last day of the month, another 283 episode, 283.j. I titled this one, Yes, Cancer from a Hypodermic Syringe, hypodermic needle injection, if you will. This is a follow-up on the video that I did yesterday in 283.I. You can think I for intramuscular, right? Or ingestion. I covered this 1952 document titled Latent or Dormant Viral Infections. Such an important document historically, such an important paper. I know it's not obvious from the title, but this is laying the groundwork for what I believe became the HIV/AIDS hypothesis. And I think, as I've covered last night, just to quickly review, Dr. Hilary Kaprowski, when he was enthusiastically pursuing oral vaccines as a more natural route, or in some cases direct route, if you think polio is a gut thing, there's no clear evidence that he was denouncing the existence of a polio virus or another virus in the body, which was causing a cascade of conditions, perhaps started by an injury from an intramuscular injection. So I think what he was trying to say here was that there can be latent or dormant viruses, and that in many cases what people think invading virus is actually something which is there, which is endogenous, or is just there in a low enough quantity and is being kept in check. And it's a disturbance in the system that is allowing that existing, dormant, sleeping, idle infection or potential infection to be launched, to take hold, to grow, or so on. This 1950 document kind of coincides with his oral polio vaccine rollout. There is a footnote in this paper on page 971 of the book that it was in. I think it's only like page 8 or 10 or so in the document itself, where it says the author, in this case it would have been Hilary Kaprowski, expresses his grateful appreciation to a Dr. Alice E., and I learned that since that the E is for Elizabeth Moore, Moore, of the Sloan Kettering Institute, now the Memorial Sloan Kettering Institute for Cancer Research, for mice-bearing tumors, and for Dr. Stanley Steller of the Department of Neurosurgery, New York School of Medicine for the human tumors. It's Dr. Alice Moore that I want to focus on. This makes it clear as day. It's absolutely undeniable right now that this Alice Moore worked with Hilary Kaprowski. It's just coincidence, I think. I don't want to give myself too much credit for it, but somehow my research, some people say it was divine intervention. I don't know. I don't know how it happened, but somehow or another, very early on in my research, I wound up stumbling into this female scientist here, whose name is Alice Moore, Moore. She was born in, 1907, 1908 in Ohio. She was an only child, and she got interested in medicine, and she rose quick. She wound up moving to New York City, and after her master's, I guess it would have been in Ohio, started working at New York University, and then ultimately at the Rockefeller Institute. She's the first woman to run a virology department. Matter of fact, she oversaw much of the yellow fever vaccine manufacturing for World War II. The people that she worked with, it's an amazing list of people from Albert Sabin to Jonas Salk. Matter of fact, when Jonas Salk in the late 1950s, this is, of course, well after his polio vaccine success, when he wanted to pursue a vaccine against cancers, he sought out this one scientist, Alice Moore. The fact that Alice Moore has no Wikipedia page tells you everything you need to know. I've worked in the tech industry, as you know, for a little over 20 years, 22, 23 years. And I was always someone who encouraged more women to get involved in STEM, science, technologies, engineering. I thought that teams that had particular balances of gender makeup I thought to be very effective. And I saw a lot of male-dominated teams just fail. So I'm a big believer in that, not over the top, but I do believe that. And what I'm trying to say is that I think Alice Moore, as a early and pioneering scientist, female scientist, would be someone who I can't understand why wouldn't be seen as a role model, if you will, or someone to highlight, especially with, we have various annual celebrations right now to showcase the talents and diversity and so on. And in this particular era, I can't understand why. She doesn't even have a Wikipedia page, and no one will ever talks about her. Yet she's worked with all of these scientists. And the reason why she initially came onto my radar, it was actually a Ty Bollinger book. I didn't read the whole book, but there's one list in his book about cancers where he listed 3 cases of notable non-consensual medical experimentation which happened in the United States of America. And directly or indirectly, all 3 connected to Alice Moore. I don't know what that means, but again, why hasn't anyone else picked up on that? Alice Moore's work with the yellow fever vaccine in World War II is a situation where she clearly would have collaborated with Hillary Kaprowski while Hillary Kaprowski had moved to Brazil. Kaprowski got out of Europe fairly early in World War II, 1941 or so, with the assistance of the Vatican, moved to Brazil, joined the Rockefeller lab down there to actually focus on the yellow fever vaccine at the same time that Alice Moore was running yellow fever vaccine manufacturing at the Rockefeller Laboratory up in New York City, most of which was being used by the United States military. Given the fact that in the year 1952, Hillary Kaprowski is offering personal thanks for samples to Alice Moore in this incredibly important document about latent or dormant viruses, means that there is some lengthy collaboration between the two. When you find a few pieces of evidence like that, there's probably a lot more. So Alice Moore's, she did a lot of work with Cornelius P. Rhodes, who went on to become an Atomic Energy Commission director, or not the top, but a director, and Chester Southam, Southam. Chester Southam was 10 years younger than her, so he learned and worked under Alice Moore. Now, Chester Southam is the person who is credited with pioneering something called virotherapy, virotherapy. There is a Wikipedia page on virotherapy. And virotherapy is this concept of using what they thought were viruses. It was serums. They were filtering them with ceramics. They couldn't find any bacteria. And they thought that maybe whatever was left, these microorganisms, what they thought they were, that couldn't be seen, they couldn't be filtered. Sometimes they cause an injury, or maybe they could even be used to cure an injury. Maybe they could even cure cancer. This is what they were experimenting. So a serum would be extracted from one person or one animal, sometimes from healthy tissue or healthy muscles, sometimes from diseased muscle or from a tumor, and then it would be cleaned up and then injected into healthy tissue or into a tumor on someone else, right? And they would look at different combinations of these experiments. And they did a lot of these experiments at the state of Ohio prison system. You can find some documentation of this in a article that I did manage to capture right here, February 1957. There's Alice Moore there. I believe that's Chester Southam in the middle. And here they are. These are doctors and Ohio State Penitentiary officials involved in cancer research using convict volunteers. So they were using a hypodermic syringe to inject something either into clean tissue and to see if they could actually give somebody a tumor, or can you actually cure a tumor? And I apologize if I'm mischaracterizing that. I don't think that they had a remarkable level of success at curing tumors. I think it happened sometimes. Who knows why, right? Given the fact that there's no real screening at all, other than size about what's going into this stuff. Nobody knows what it is. But also, I think they were able to give people cancer They used a hypodermic syringe in this case, and the question is how deeply was it injected? Was it simply injected into the top level skin deep, or did they get all the way into the muscle? And it's evidence that they could, based upon these particular experiments, were able to create cancers. Now, I worded it as cancer from a hypodermic syringe, and it leaves it open-ended. Is it simply the fact that they were using a hypodermic syringe? Not necessarily, because many people don't have cancers and tumors and have gotten all kinds of different shots from hypodermic syringes. However, there is evidence that something can be injected using a hypodermic syringe and a tumor can be created. It's documented. Matter of fact, some of these documents are some of the hardest things I've had to locate here. I know I have it listed on here somewhere. Unfortunately, it's a little hard for me to locate it right now. They did a lot of work with West Nile viruses, oncolytic virotherapy, etc. And because their inability to, in great detail, describe what it is they were injecting, you need to take a lot of these with a grain of salt. However, the general question, is it possible to cause cancers with nothing more than an injection of something? The answer is yes. And amongst the team that was closest to documenting this and figuring it out are people that were in the network of Jonas Salk and Hillary Kaprowski. If anything, Jonas Salk would have looked up to Dr. Alice Moore. And Chester Southam looked up to her as well. A curiosity about Alice Moore, and if the photo of her as a 20-year-old makes it a little bit harder to take the whole situation seriously, we can look at this travel document from 1954 where she's going to Brazil. That's right, this Brazil, same place where Hillary Kaprowski was. So this is Alice Moore at age 40-something. By this time, she was divorced. She wound up not having any children. She went to Russia. She got to travel the world quite a bit. She went on to become the head of cell cultures for the Special Virus Cancer Program. You know, that program that everyone loves to talk about with conspiracies about it being the source of AIDS and weaponized viruses, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. She ran that cell culture program also, in addition to being in charge of the yellow fever vaccine manufacturing for World War II, and working with Hillary Kaprowski, and working with Chester Southam, and being involved in the prisoner experiments, and actually being the person who was probably as responsible as anyone for the HeLa cells, collecting and transport of HeLa cells. You know, Henrietta Lacks, that story involves, guess what, Alice E. Moore as well. And this should be really hammering home, why doesn't anyone know about her? Even if someone is fully embracing the official narratives of virology, isn't her background captivating and fascinating? There's very few other scientists that were as connected to as many things as her. It's shocking that this is a layup for anyone that wants to show an example of an impactful female scientist. It's an amazing example. You know, they do talk about Charlotte Friend. You know, Charlotte Friend did isolate a virus, the Friend virus, etc. And you know who mentored Charlotte Friend? You know who Charlotte Friend studied under? Alice Moore. Alice Moore was Charlotte Friend's mentor. Matter of fact, I think a lot of the work and success of Charlotte Friend is because of Alice Moore as well. A lot of details about Alice Moore's life have been deleted. I was able to get some cryptic information. Well, one thing that I know is a very specific address of a residence that she bought in northwestern Connecticut in the town of Cornwall Bridge, which is interesting because my logo, the H, is actually modeled after the Cornwall Bridge. It's just a coincidence, I promise you. But she had a long-time residence. I think she bought it sometime in the 1960s in Cornwall Bridge, Connecticut. Interesting because another resident in that area, only about 5 or 6 miles away, is Henry Kissinger. She had a second residence on the east side of Midtown Manhattan, of course, not too far from the Rockefeller Memorial Sloan Kettering. Interesting because a short walk from there will be Henry Kissinger's, New York City, Manhattan residence. She also had a third residence in Georgetown, near Washington, D.C. I don't have the exact address for this. Another person that had a residence in Georgetown was Henry Kissinger. I suspect that Alice Moore was also one of the primary sources of information on cancer, vaccines, and other information related to what eventually became the Human Genome Project for Henry Kissinger. Now, she was a few years older than Henry Kissinger. She died in 1997, I think, 1996, 1997, of old age. Either way, why doesn't anyone know about her? I don't know, but I keep bringing her up from time to time because I know that the system, which is censoring me as heavy as it possibly can, is just hoping that eventually I'm going to get buried algorithmically, and this inconvenient truth is going to go away. But it's not going to go away. Even if I never get credit for it, which is fine, because we're all going to be forgotten about, it's going to come out eventually. Someone's going to get credit for it. It's information. It's not mine. I don't own it.
So in review, this show...
It also provides an opportunity, again, by talking about how it's not just vaccines causing cancer. Maybe it's procedures done using a hypodermic syringe to inject foreign material, to inject combinations of biological substances. That act, in and of itself, may be capable of causing cancer, may be capable of causing tumors, capable of dysregulating cells, because the word cancer is millions of ways that cells can start to grow in an unregulated way. Millions of ways. There's no one thing that causes cancer. There's many different things. So if it was impossible to have any sort of control as to what was being injected into the prisoners, but they were able to cause tumors, if you look at it, what's the common denominator? The way it's being injected, for your information. That's it, guys. Thank you. Take care. Like, share, etc. God bless.